Yo, that was...
Like in it, because it's like a pop.
So here's the thing, y'all. The start of this video was supposed to be about why I haven't been on for so long, certain videos that you may have seen or haven't seen, all types of shit. Like, the copyright system on YouTube has really been packing me the fuck up. I'm not like most creators. I don't give a shit about any type of money you make off of a platform that I don't pay for. You can have all that shit, but just let me put it up, bro. Let me take my little clips of the boys and throw it in a video. Or don't. I'm gonna leave that shit alone. If you, viewer, are interested in long form dissections of each episode of The Boys, man, check me out on that Patreon, because who gives a fuck about timelines anyway? It's weird being a consumer of a bunch of fiction. The various timelines are all over the fucking place. My Hero just finished, The Boys is on its final season, but not before another season of Gen V. A prequel is coming out. The Mexican show is in the works. Ageless characters like Batman and Superman are still producing modern projects, big and small. The Absolute Universe is yet another brand new timeline. The Krakoan era is done, like fucking over with, but that hasn't done away with all the politics. Luke Cage is fighting an immortal Moon Knight in some shit called Timeless. The creator of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Dragon Ball Z are both dead. Marvel is trying to squeeze life out of the 1940s. Ash Ketchum isn't even rapping anymore. And some of the most enticing media I've consumed this year was Vigilantes, a goddamn prequel. Escapism is starting to require some fucking escape, and the world is on fire. The only thing letting me know what year it is the fact that we haven't received Beyond the Spider-Verse yet. Once that's out, my sense of time is fried. So let's discuss My Hero. The GOAT is finally taking his rest, and I know it doesn't always seem like it, but this is a superhero friendly channel, a pro superhero channel. I'm only kinda against soups, but that's its own other thing. To me, My Hero is the only love letter to superheroes we will ever get this faithfully, that masterfully weaves the tropes of anime and the Western superhero into a varied and storied opera. The death of Star and Stripe, the ascension of Tomura Shigaraki, the resurgence of All for One, the raid on the Shihei Asaikai, which ended up being a battle for Eri's soul, this shedding of an old pantheon that forces the youth to grow up much faster, where we watch actual children face off against mass murderers and terrorists, often single-handedly or handicapped. The nature of quirks makes the common madman a force of nature, and so these babies find themselves wielding and fighting against massive amounts of power on the regular, with dire consequences for any failure. Bakugo gets captured, and that leads to the greatest hero and villain of all time extinguishing each other's flames. Star and Stripe was unsuccessful, but her dying works made victory possible. What I'm saying is the cast of My Hero is so iconically diverse, and they've all been given so many opportunities to shine and display their best qualities and traits, some more than others, but everyone a legend in their own right, and the actions of these characters reverberate through the property, adding a color and texture to the superhero that it is still struggling to find. Today I want to highlight that cast and give the spotlight to 5 stellar characters from My Hero, where we discuss their feats and their impact, and really just their mythology as a way of just appreciating the series. So join me for 5 stellar characters from My Hero Academia.
I don't want anyone in the back worrying about us. Incredible charge. Well done. Thanks, just glad I could help.
First up, Muscular. It is time to give Goto his flowers. Muscular deserves credit for being the first villain to stop playing with Deku and finally bringing him face to face with the vast consequences that heroes face on a daily, where if you fail here, that might be 10 or more lives lost just to start, not to mention who it would have been. Class 1A and B were the only things standing in the way of the Gunga Mountain raid not being a bigger catastrophe than it was, and that was very well the end of Hero Society as it was known. It was only because of them that Makia was eventually caught, and these are the only heroes we had left for the war, where one child and Aizawa specifically were instrumental in keeping the young lord on a leash, and if Deku had lost here, they would have been cooked much earlier. Muscular was essentially Deku's wristwatch, letting him know what time it was. Muscular would have went on a massacre, killing an entire 2 classrooms of superpowered youth, making All for One and Cameron Hodge and the Purifiers all very proud, I'm sure.
Once we team up with Class A, there'll be 40 students here.
you. That's a whole lot of quirks for our homeroom teachers to manage on their own.
Of the villains at the time, Muscular was and is the only one willing and able to put pressure on the 9th successor of One For All in the fashion that he did, putting Deku's heart to task just as much as his body. There was no heart to save, no ideal to be won over. Either you beat this criminal decisively or you and the entire camp are going to literally get crushed. In most cases in anime, but often in My Hero, the heroes and villains are often combating each other on an ideological level, sometimes much more than a physical one. That is scripture. Stain's machinations led him to serial killing. Overhaul believed that the current system was so corrupt that the routine torture of a little girl would give rise to a new society by way of drug dealing, and Gentle Criminal was on some bullshit. But Muscular and his motivations were noticeably less grandiose. What I like about Goto, but what I find hard to articulate about him, is his mania. How truly committed to his role he was, keeping a multitude of replacement eyes just for switching them out according to his mood. You'd be hard pressed to find a villain this thirsty for violence and as capable of exacting it immediately. It's no wonder that Carnage was inspiration. Two things that make Muscular, aside from his muscles, are his gleeful, bloodthirsty nature and his unrelenting power. And the only character in my experiences with fiction to come close is Conquest from Invincible. Conquest and Muscular are my kind of villain, one that can't be reasoned with, and when Conquest is on the panel, if you are not ready to maim and kill him, then it's raps for everyone in the vicinity, brutally injuring Mark and his brother Ollie and murdering Mark's Mary Jane. At the point of his Muscular fight, Izuku was very much just used to hedging his bets until he couldn't play anymore, and then he would just 100% his way to victory, with some heinous injuries in tow. Deku was like the game, all too used to using that same old freestyle, and Muscular was one of the 5 fingers of death. Deku would attempt to end his fight with Goto multiple times, and each time it only would make him angrier and stronger. His quirk Pump Up allows for an exponential increase in strength immediately and for his entire body, giving him a type of strength only really seen by the quirk passing peoples. In My Hero, raw super strength, not by way of some combination of quirk application, is so uncommon that many would associate Deku's quirk with All Might's immediately. So not only was Deku not ready or prepared to fight someone this strong, the world wasn't even used to having people that strong in it, and most individuals in the verse, when confronted with massive strength, end up having to run away, and Midoriya did not have that option. In the actual fight, we discover that Muscular is acting a bit on his own accord, and not really following the plan set and followed by the rest of the league, and also that he is the murderer of the parents of the young lad being taken care of by the Pussycats, the nephew of Mandalay, Kota. Kota's parents were the pros responsible for Muscular's missing eye, and in return, Muscular is the one responsible for Kota's missing parents, and their clash is one of the many My Hero fights we criminally don't get to witness, because how Waterhose was able to get this type of wound on Muscular is something I'd like to see. By the time Deku understands these things about Muscular, he realizes that a super strong, murderous madman is barreling down on the students of UA, and the only one capable of stopping him with no casualties must protect a young child while doing it and isn't even fully acclimated to his power. Muscular probably would have smacked All Might around before he got his bearings, and Deku was far from the successor he was coming into. But the very reason that we are starting off with Muscular and why I believe he is such a stellar character is because his resolve and tenacity is what would begin to transform Midoriya into the hero he was striving to be, willing to risk it all and coming to terms with what that means. By the time the fight was full blown, Muscular had all but fully ousted Izuku, repeatedly outmatching One For All. In their final clash, Deku almost resigns to being crushed by Goto, with the latter gleefully and relentlessly aiming to extinguish the life of this young hero, where he coins the blood-curdling line,
Show me your blood!
Muscular was about to kill Deku, and the reality of that was so grim and bleak and reminiscent to the death of his parents that Kota would awaken his quirk, pleading for the muscle villain to stop killing Deku, and this would be all it would take for our boy to dig deep enough to realize that failure now means Kota's death next, and pulls out the most ass-pullingest move I've seen short of him giving the quirk away in a drop of blood, where he snaps Muscular's fibers with his fingers and delivers a blow 1,000,000% stronger than anything he's thrown previously, completely decimating Muscular and permanently becoming Kota's hero and mine. I personally felt like this is where I started to disavow all Deku slander, and where I feel his character makes one of many transitions, finding in himself how far he is willing to go to protect those who need protecting. If Muscular wasn't the bloodthirsty, uber strong maniac that he was, gleefully uninterested in holding back on a child, then Deku would have never been put in place to truly literally become him, stepping on the gas so hard that he breaks through the floor when there wasn't even anything left in the tank. At number 4, ladies and gents, we have the dismember artist herself, Mirko the Rabbit Hero, and My Hero's resident superwoman.
Saw the news and hopped over. Patchwork, you're part of the league, huh? I'll kick your butt.
One of My Hero's harshest themes is the loss of heroes, a loss of heroism in society, the loss of the heroic spirit, and of course what it is that a hero must sacrifice. Heroes risk life and limb, sure, but no one exemplifies the latter like Rumi Usagiyama, the number 5 pro hero in Japan, meaning that just 4 down from All Might in power was our rabbit hero. From what we see, Mirko's powers are certainly enough to be higher, with the only thing keeping her down being that everyone above her is broken. As I was just mentioning, we do not see many heroes with raw physical strength as one of their powers. Some get around to it, like Tetsu Tetsu in Kirishima, or even Ryukyu in her dragon form, but aside from them and the Nomu, not many possess a lot of muscle aside from these lovebirds over here. And one thing Mirko has is a lot of muscle. In a superpowered society, those who protect accept that that's just a way of the life they live. And through the course of the series, we lose a lot. We lose Ingenium's whole career. Aizawa loses a limb and an eye. Shirakumo, Native, and Midnight lose their lives. And of all the loss one must face in this life and in My Hero, few things have ever been lost so tragically and missed so dearly as Mirko's beloved bronzed superpowered appendages. I actually started to shudder when the head crush Nomu obliterated Mirko's arm. I was in shock when she screamed out in pain. In a quirked world, the body is currency, and so you are actively robbing a hero when you dismember them or maim them irreversibly. Even more so with the super strong, as their powers can only manifest through their limbs. Lemillion could still permeate without an arm or two. Mirko is number 4, in large part for her aesthetic. The thick and strong, high energy rabbit hero who used to participate in illegal cage matches named after a prize fighting legend hits all the spots for the boy whose favorite Pokemon were Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee. And if that's not enough, this is just My Hero top. Mirko is very well put together, and she was a fan favorite waiting to happen. In her defining sequence after being cornered by a pack of 4 high-end Nomu, Mirko defends the attacks of 2, smashes the defense of one of them while her arm was being crushed, jumps to the shoulders of the arm crusher and rips his head off while dodging laser beams, smashing his noodle into the ground, killing the high-end instantly. That's the defense from 2 super attacks, an attack strong enough to smash through one's defenses in the middle of excruciating pain, and even killing a high-end in the process. That's how you rabbit hero. You lot need to pay attention. Mirko would not make it out of Garaki's lab unscathed, but not only does she survive her attack and the cauterizing afterwards, but she's also ripe and ready for action literally at the start of the final war, sporting replaceable prosthetic combat limbs in the place of the ones lost, on the team tasked with keeping the murderer of America's number 1 at bay until Deku arrived. Mirko maintains a warrior spirit, living every day like it could be her final one, so she can live regretless and be decisive. Heroes lose, but Mirko loses with enthusiasm and vigor, and one must be willing to dismember if you want to beat the rabbit. Rumi is yet another portrait of the troubled hero. She is All Might missing an entire stomach, Aizawa at Nomu's mercy. From her intro to the end, we see Mirko lose length in one of her beloved ears. Her mighty arm is crushed. One of her oak-like legs has to be amputated, and she still doesn't hesitate to dismember herself further, choosing to lose her arm when caught by Shiga, not wincing a minute when fucking metal coils are wrapped around the nub, and then uses that same nub for leverage for a new move to Tomura's face and sternum. Mirko is categorically not Death Arms.
On my soul, ain't no hoe in my anatomy.
Rumi truly is the complete package of a character. A wonderfully simple animal quirk that puts me in the mind of Kraven and Superwoman. She's a cage fighter, a prize fighter. She shows up in the prequel. She saves Endeavor after his greatest W. She never holds a thing back when protecting and serving. Inspired by the Croatian king of kicking people, Mirko is a top tier superhero and one stellar character. Shout out to the best gacha game of all time, Skullgirls Mobile, for introducing a Mirko palette to the game by way of their character Misfortune, whose entire thing is dismemberment. That's how you Easter egg.
That makes me human! Do not behead us!
At number 3, we have number 6. I know some of y'all just did a double take. Rokuro Nomura, sometimes known as Rock or simply Number 6, is the primary antagonist for the bombastic ass prequel that is Vigilantes. He is the retconned idea for the Nomu and is a rough draft for the work that All for One would do on Tomura Shigaraki. Rokuro was the first mentally ill young man that AFO pumped full of quirks and goaded into a dangerous obsession. Number 6 is what happens when you give a boy everything but an identity and watch him scramble to find that on his own. Growing up, Number 6 idolized the hero O'Clock, and so when All for One stole the original O'Clock's quirk and gave it to the young formless man, he was now one step closer to developing the identity he never had, even scarring himself to give himself more of an origin, which is just textbook aggrandizing. For all my gushing over Muscular, one thing he wasn't was a villain's villain. Goto did not follow rules, he was not goal-oriented, and he every time operates in a way that calls all manner of attention available. 6 is noticeably not that. Bro was machinacious and invisible. He was always plotting and scheming something, and he was never above going lower than low, using disguise, deception, and brainwashing as a way of moving around in the world, using a stolen quirk and taunting the original owner, also drugging his daughter, drugging people with quirks and then trying to kill him. He attempts to drop a tower full of civilians and pro-heroes. He murders nobody pro-heroes, and then he becomes so mad obsessed with the main character that he pushes his quirk-modified body to its limit, burning away all his flesh and bone, leaving nothing but his nervous system. What makes 6 so compelling is that he takes the theme of obsession found in My Hero and becomes and embodies all of its dark and darker examples, all informed by a superhero trope. 6 is obsessed with O'Clock, a discount Flash on some Eobard shit. After O'Clock loses his quirk and becomes Batman, 6 becomes Nightwing, and his entire quest to become who he wants to be, intent on using the gift of others and their blood, is the same grandiose obsessed nerd shit that All for One is on, which was informed by comic books. Rock is my kind of villain, tragically and hopelessly broken, a dark parallel to our hero Koichi, traditionally a villain with almost infinite power options by way of the villain factory, a depravity that allows him to kill the innocent, and his origin is nothing but the results of All for One's manipulation, making him woefully doomed. When reading Vigilantes, I found 6 to be mad intriguing, all on his own, and his scheming was so superb and lawless that it's a shame he didn't survive to see the main series, though I know that's not how the whole thing works. In his final moment, he realizes defeat and is pushed to the end of his life because of his quirks and schemes, but still desperate to leave his mark on the world. 6 decides that the most impactful thing that he could do before his death is scarring the protagonist Koichi, leaving a reminder as the one person the Crawler couldn't save, but also having finally done something meaningful in his life. The operatic nature of 6's personality and the way it ebbs and flows throughout the story, along with his narrative flair for the heinous, glued me to his perspective during Vigilantes. And while I don't want to derail by talking about it here, what he did to Pop was unforgivable. Number 6 is one of the rawest characters to be birthed in My Hero, and his various forms and power interactions are a spectacle every time. A stellar character, for sure. At number 2, continuing our Vigilante binge, we have Koichi Himawari, the Crueler, the Crawler, and the Sky Crawler. If 6 was a villain's villain, then Koichi is certainly a hero's hero. The type of hero that Lemillion and Night Eye would be proud of, the type of figure Stain was looking for. Operating as a staple figure of his neighborhood, Naruhara, Koichi begins his hero journey outside of the law, performing as a hero with no hero license, making him a vigilante. Koichi initially doesn't aim to get involved with too much, choosing to run from most fights and prioritizing de-escalation or stalling so the pros could come in, only really taking action if it's minimal consequences involved. All this would change though when his routine do-gooding exposes a villainous plot growing from his own neighborhood that would exploit the lives and the quirks of those who live there, forcing Koichi to join forces with other vigilantes, Pop and Knuckle Duster, in order to put a stop to all the nonsense, which of course was being perpetuated by previous entry number 6. By the end of the story, Koichi has helped save the lives of most of Japan's pro-heroes. He protected and saved the life of Captain Celebrity. He aided in the defeat of multiple low-level villains and ultimately outsmarted 6 in his machinations of evil, all while turning his would-be D-tier quirk of sliding glide into outright flight, transitioning from bug to butterfly, if you can forgive the analogy, because butterflies are bugs too. Of all of My Hero, I think Deku's spirit to be the most potent, and the world and the events literally conspire in his favor multiple times. His will is almost stronger than All Might's actual fist. That said, Koichi is everything Deku becomes out the box, and was always the man with the plan, just in need of a platform. He begins the story of his life getting fly swatted by his worrywart mother whenever he was flying, experiencing very early on what it's like for them to just not want to see you do great.
Be honest, ain't I'm clean, no.
But despite the efforts of his mother, his quirk, and at times even Koichi himself, nothing shows to be capable of dulling Mr. Himawari's heroic spirit and ability. Never once does my guy fail to act in multiple situations where he was very much out of his depth. Faced with multiple deaths if he fails, always choosing to apply his mind and his quirk instead of giving in to fear. That could be a bit of hyperbole because Koichi is notably conflict averse, but what he has is the difference between Death Arms showing up at the height of Hero Society and quitting during the collapse. While Mount Lady is here for her own reasons first, but the people as well. Plenty of characters will be seen critiquing Koichi's hard-headedness, but he is often the only one with the chutzpah or even the ability to stand in between civilian life and its ceasing. I only critique him truly for not wifing up Pop. Last but not least, before getting to number 1, let's talk about Koichi's quirk, Sliding Glide. By generating force fields on his hands and feet, he is able to attract or repel himself away from almost any surface, sliding or sticking to almost anything. He can weaponize the repulsion to great effect, creating blasts or beams that can pierce bodies and slay monsters. Initially having a top speed of around 1 Moomin Rider because he didn't know how to brake, after a bit of training with Tensei, the older beanhead brother of this younger beanhead brother, Koichi discovers that by accelerating in the opposite direction he can stop instantly, giving him a much greater control of his mobility and allowing him to go faster without harming himself. From that one lesson in quirk usage with time and traumatic events, Koichi goes from only having one pussy boy super move of evasion to being able to single-handedly catch jumbo jets when they're falling out of the sky. Sliding Glide went from a joke quirk that made people think of Koichi as a cockroach to rivaling actual speedster speed, which perfectly encapsulates the greatness that is Koichi Himawari. You can think he's a bug all you want to, until you catch him in the sky doing a whole bunch of shit that you can't do. So let's recap, friendos. 4 stellar characters as we wait for the reveal of the 5th. The order has no bearing on the actual stellarness of the characters, as they are all superb in their own right. First up, we have Muscular for being a pivotal hero in Deku's development. Probably one of the scariest villains out the box, and he forced Midoriya to hit him the hardest that he's ever had to hit anybody ever. And that boy killed Shigaraki. We never see the 1 million smash again. Mirko, because she's the number 5 pro hero, and the only others to solo high-ends were actual goats, let alone 3, and she also proves her number 5 spot way more than Crush proved his number 6 spot. I'm not saying he didn't earn it, I'm just saying that he just barely proved it. 6 hits the list because he didn't need no League of Villains to go hard, and he held his own as a villain with just a bunch of quirks and mental illnesses, unlike All For One who felt like he needed One For All. Koichi because he cultivates a real heroic spirit off the back of his own work and develops his subpar quirk into one of the best. And last but not least, would be heir to the Todoroki throne, scarred up, crazy, scary zombie man Dabi, also known as Toya Todoroki.
Yes, the so-called villain sitting in front of you is Endeavor's oldest son. At the time of this recording, I've killed more than 30 innocent people.
Dabi is a poster child for the worst part of quirk marriages being the people who seek them, because at no point does the process of mixing quirks make you hit your wife and mentally abuse your kids, as well as hitting them. The first offspring of Enji Todoroki and Rei Hamura, Toya was born with the sole intention of being the combination of their tremendous bloodlines of fire and ice. But something got fucked up in the Punnett Square, and so Dabi ends up with fires more intense than his father's, but a body that better suits the freezing cold. However, Endeavor would also passed down his inferiority complex, and like his flames, it burns much hotter in Toya for some reason. Once the dream of surpassing All Might is implanted into this young sadist psyche, he bases everything about himself into that dream, even when his father starts to pull away from it. Toya would continue to work his fire quirk despite his father letting him know the danger that puts him in, constantly burning and eventually maiming himself in an attempt to get stronger. When Shoto shows up, the perfect genetic anomaly, there goes that Punnett Square again, Toya is distraught distraught, realizing that his spot as the golden child has been taken and that he is being seen as a failure by his father. After repeatedly denying his father's wishes for him to stop burning himself, Toya would eventually attempt an attack on Shoto, leading to the state of affairs that would define Shoto's life, where his dad feels like he is too valuable to risk damaging around his failure kids. Toya would eventually learn of his already intense fire's nature to burn blue, and that his abilities are linked to his emotions, only to shortly after that end up burning himself in the surrounding area to a delicious crisp, because somehow between calling his son a failure and belittling his wife, Endeavor couldn't find the time to tell his superpowered freak of nature's son, a homegrown super terrorist in the making, how to turn the fire down. He just missed that for some reason. Endeavor could tell that Toya had stronger flames than him as a kid, so why he wouldn't teach the boy to turn it down is beyond me. This suggests that Enji gave up on him the moment he learned of his deficiency, which is exactly why he looked the way he do now. That boy in that roomie. When Toya resurfaces as Dabi years later with black hair and an undying vendetta, everything about his new persona would reflect the horror of his upbringing. His inability to cry and feel pain because of his damaged body is a direct result of Endeavor's careless and ruthless child rearing. His propensity for the double cross and secrecy is a reflection of the grand hoodwink that was his experience as Enji's son, where you are my pride and joy until something out of your control causes me to forget you. And his callous nature to life in general is just as rigid and ironically cold as his father's attitude towards his mother was. A heat-resistant body might be the only thing bro didn't get from his father, as he also inherited his issues with women.
It was stupid to think you'd get it. No girl would understand this. But I'm worried about you, brother. You agree, right? Besides, the women in our family are all useless. Shut up, Mom. You don't know anything. This from one of your self-help books or something?
Dabi is the only member of the League of Villains with an actual bone to pick with superhuman society, as his suffering is in fact a result of the culture and methods of the time, where a respected and admired individual, damn near a cornerstone, is allowed to be the type of villain emotionally and towards his family that he would otherwise be locking up. And Toya is also the only one who's been wronged by a hero in their ways personally. Toga's parents are no better than this guy's. Shiga never stood a chance. Spinner is a slur everywhere, and those other dweebs just didn't have anything to do. Dabi followed Stain so hard because his entire life is a product of the problem that Stain aimed to solve: false heroes power broking in lives they deemed less significant than theirs.
Yeah, he's not really a cuddly person. More like an average guy pretending to play the hero.
By the end of the series, Dabi's shining trait, his mania, is taken to its last possible conclusion. After being let loose on Shoto and the Endeavor Agency, Dabi unleashes his quirk, allowing his blue flame to consume anything it can, including his own mortal shell, burning away his flesh and muscle, leaving nothing but a vengeful skeleton. In this fight, Toya would prove to be a prodigy, maybe even a genius, not only copying Endeavor's best moves with much more lethality, but also surviving the flash freezing of a city block by copying Shoto's phosphor with just his fire powers, and also after only seeing it once. Upon resurrection, having pushed his inferno body to its limit, Dabi's heart was about to blow, taking with it a few kilometers, only being stopped by the combined might of the entire Todoroki clan and another great glacier. To make it even worse, turns out that Dabi did have ice powers and just needed to be on the brink of death to activate them, meaning that if Endeavor had just made his boy into the hero he wanted to be, there's an actual great chance that he would have been the hero Enji wanted him to be, because near-death experiences are the name of the game, and he got this far with this fucked up body anyway, and Endeavor didn't teach him how to take it down.
I don't get it. His body's not supposed to be compatible with fire. So why hasn't he been incinerated yet?
If Endeavor had just taught the young boy how to turn the heat down, there's a high chance he would have been a great hero, without the help of his father, maybe even surpassing Endeavor. But his father's lack of humanity and foresight leads to nothing but glimpses of a lost future. And because the Todorokis couldn't keep it together as a family, they are forced to cooperate as one, as the last and only thing keeping Dabi from turning the massive crater he was going to leave into their family's lasting legacy. This is the tragedy of the Todoroki family, and it's not even all of it. It's just that Dabi as a character and a thematic piece puts it all on his back, and the impact of every decision in regards to his life has dire consequences for everyone involved. Literally, no one leaves the same. Toya's very existence means that Shoto must confront the shadows of his bloodline and his privilege. It means that Natsuo and Fuyumi must emerge from the sidelines. It means Rei has to stop being passive and take accountability for her role as mother and wife, and it puts Endeavor on a crash course with atonement atonement via induction into the Mirko Club. And if that isn't top tier stellar character design and writing, then I literally don't know what it is.
Everyone's watching. This was all it took? Was it that simple from the beginning?
From the top, that's Muscular because he's muscular, Mirko because she's a rabbit, Six and Koichi because they did need one for all and all for one to construct a compelling rivalry, and last but not least, Dabi for being the most heinous single example of the faults of Hero Society. Because say what you want about AFO, but that's just a problem with power, how it corrupts absolutely and shit. Dabi wouldn't even exist without Hero Society and its toxicity. It's a foundation of his upbringing. If there's no Hero Society, then there's no top spot for Endeavor to obsess over, no gacha gambling with Rei's uterus, no Toya, which means he isn't on Makia's back to burn Kamuy Woods. Makia goes to sleep and Midnight would still be walking around